So you've gone through all of the different exceptions that are really pertinent to this part of the class. Now we're starting to build into or go into a little bit about what if we don't want to convert into an integer, what other options are there? This was the code that we started off with from almost page number 1, and it's always been parsing to an integer. But again, I told you from before then, as we had other options, and here they are: parse byte, parse short, long, float. Here's the other numeric types that we can convert our string into if we need to convert it into a numeric data type. Okay? So again, that's the big deal with that. If you don't need to convert it to an integer type or numeric type, then maybe it's a string that we need to still do some checking on that we will cover a little bit later, or that you should have covered already in strings. So just a heads up with that. So this is the overall setup. This is interchangeable. You could put long.parse long really for this whole thing here, not just the end. This whole part right in here could be interchangeable. You would need to change the real number into something else, but that's how we would interchange that with any numeric data type that we have here. So here's what I want from you guys. This is an exercise. Very simple, really, with all the code that I've given you, because you can change something quickly and then you should be about done. So don't overthink this. Accept a code range from 0 to 100. Things to remember. What are the valid ranges? I want to do some minor research. What data type should we be using? Could you have a 99.5 on a test? So integer may not be your best idea for this. What should a default value be? What should we be checking for? Data type, the range of the values. What should be used in the finally section? You know, is it an if else, is it a switch case? Okay, a switch case, I know it's probably been too much we've gone over that one. I don't want you to worry about going over a grade, but I want you to start worrying about going over this, create it, test it out. Notice every time that I've shown you some code, I've usually tested it out to show you things that work and things that didn't work, and it recovered from it. So that means you're going to need a do while loop as you're doing this. So work on this portion, copy and paste what I've given you. Change it slightly, fantastic, doesn't bother me. But that's what you need to work on right now. Get to work. For this particular solution, this user went with parse byte, which is still an integer, which makes sense, right? It's a little bit shorter than having an integer because you're going from 0 to 100. But to be honest with you, I'm okay with this. If you did this as a float, it's going to look almost exactly the same except for the word float in there somewhere. You don't want to use double. Double, remember, is double precision. I don't need that. I really don't. So the overall setup, this one happens to be for byte, which is basically an integer. But if you did yours for a float, it's going to look exactly the same except for that's going to be float, that's going to be parse float, that's going to be float, that's going to be float. You literally can almost do a Control H and change it with a float instead. That's the difference between the two. The overall setup. Now with float, by the way, you might have to do 0.0 and score is 100.00 or something like that. Otherwise the IDE might get pissed off here and there. The debug statements that I have here, I'm actually going to go over in a minute, even though I really only have one of those in here. The flags are on here. Yes, there's the do while loop. Notice it's a copy and paste. This code should look pretty damn familiar. That's okay. I don't mind you copy and paste and changing for what you do. What do you think I do all the time? Okay, I don't reinvent the wheel. So this is the overall setup. Again, try, catch, finally. Do, while, there's the flags. Here's where I'm trying something that'll probably, here's where I'm trying, it could blow up. Here's how I catch it with the number format exception. And then finally is where I actually really do the range check to see if the flag's okay, and then produce if I have an issue, or at the end, I actually don't. Everything was fine. I can get out of that loop and move on. That's the setup.